We're dealing this week with Unit 10, Jeremiah chapters 33 through 39. One of the things that we very often have trouble with when dealing with prophetic books is trying to determine the boundaries of a particular oracle or prophecy. Most of the time, the English translations help us because they've divided the material into paragraphs, if you will. But recognize that originally there really were no boundaries, no markers between the different oracles. Rather, it had to be determined of this oracle ends the previous this sentence ends the previous oracle, and this sentence or verse begins the next oracle. And so sometimes determining the boundaries of a particular prophecy can be difficult. And one of the things that we need to try to do is make sure that when we're preaching or teaching a chapter or whatever in Jeremiah or any prophetic book, is that we are looking at one oracle. We don't want to be preaching the second half of one oracle and the beginning half of another oracle. We need to look at a particular specific oracle or prophecy. That way we're getting the context. The passage needs to be understood in its context and interpreted in its particular context, because each of those oracles have issues related to that oracle that may not relate to the previous oracle or the following oracle. And also related to understanding prophecy specifically is we need to interpret a prophecy in its context. What's going on in that particular prophecy? For example, Jeremiah 33. There are several oracles in that particular chapter. One of those deals with the righteous branch that has been, Jeremiah 33:14 starts out, "Behold, the days are coming." So it's looking forward to a time when the righteous branch that is going to be come from David establishes a kingdom. And of course, we as New Testament Christians, we run immediately to Jesus with that. And rightly so, because the New Testament interprets that for us. But also in that particular oracle, there's a passage that says, for example, verse 17, chapter 33, verse 17, says that there's going to be one that will sit forever on the throne of Israel. Now, we run to Jesus with that. But the very next verse also says, the Levitical priest will never cease to offer sacrifices forever. Now, how do we as New Testament Christians deal with that one? We say Jesus is the king forever. But didn't Jesus, in His ministry, and especially considering what Hebrews says about Jesus and the high priest after the order of Melchizedek, where does the Levitical priest, where does that individual fit in the context of Christ? That's a question we've got to deal with. We can't simply take some verses in an oracle and make it apply and totally ignore the other verses in that oracle. We've got to take it as a group. Try to understand it in its context. We can make Scripture mean anything we want if we take it out of context. So we are to rightly divide the word of truth. That's what our task is. And we need to take a passage in its context, because if we take it out of context, we have become the authority rather than Scripture being the authority. Scripture has to remain authority. We are the interpreters. We're not the authority in it. Let Scripture interpret itself. Let Scripture dictate the theology that we have. Let's not take our theology and try to impose our theology over a passage to make it mean something that it doesn't. So, chapter 33 is just an example of one of the difficulties. I hope you have fun studying Scripture this week. God bless.